Okay, stand by for a minute. Okay, we're live.
And I will just wait till my clock says 5 o'clock and we'll get going. Okay, that's 5 o'clock. We can get moving here. I will call this meeting of the Port Hood River Commission to order. Michael, are there any modifications to the agenda from staff?
President Shepherd, I'm a little distant, but I do not believe there are any changes.
Perfect. I did not receive any from commissioners. Are there any that I don't know about?
None from Commissioner Strike.
There.
Commissioner Fox, on the consent agenda, I do have a couple of issues there, but we can wait until we get there.
Okay, if it's okay. Was there any public comment received this evening or anybody with us tonight?
No.
All right, then we will move directly into the consent agenda. Commissioner Fox, you had a couple questions.
Yeah, items number B and items number C, which deals with the T-hanger lease rates for 2022 and the marina mortgage rates for 2022. When I looked at the package, it wasn't real clear to me how we really compare to like examples. There was an attempt on the marina to show some comparisons, but not on the T-hanger. I'm just a little concerned about why are we doing this now instead of putting it right after the fall planning session. Seems to me in the fall planning session, we have an opportunity to kind of shape and change things for the next year and the out years by agreeing on lease rates tonight. Doesn't that preclude us to making any kind of adjustment to those during the fall planning session? This is very consistent with what Commissioner Chapman said in the meeting notes from last time, that she would like to see lease rates discussed during the fall planning session. It just seems to me we're out of sequence here a bit.
Commissioner Fox, may I respond?
Sure.
Okay. What we have to do is we have to have them approved by December 1st so that we can give the tenants a 30-day notice by January 1st of 2022. So I try to get it into the meetings now in case there's any discussion on it so that we can have them all ready to roll for sure by the first meeting of November, because if something happens at the second meeting of November, then I'm going to miss the deadline that I'm supposed to have. So that's why we don't push it any further into the fall.
No, I understand that and appreciate the schedule. You could go ahead and get such documents ready to go, but hold issuing until we've had the fall planning session, which I believe is in early November. So between that date and your December 1st, you still have plenty of time to sign off the document, assuming we don't make any changes, or you may have to do a couple of adjustments if there is some changes. But it's not crafting the document. I would think it would be pretty superficial change.
Is fall planning a public meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's no reason that we couldn't pass a motion regarding any topic at fall planning such as this. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's right.
Does that give, if we pull out B and C for now, with the idea that one way or another, staff has an answer at fall planning, does that give you an adequate amount of time? Daryl and Greg, I guess.
Right. Yes, and also for Fred, he would be part of this as well. I believe it does.
If that's acceptable for you guys, I'm fine with pulling out B and C and and let's make a note that we're going to take care of that at fall planning.
The one comment that I would also share with you in fall planning, Daryl, if you could bring some additional comparisons that show how we really compare to the community of what we're charging here. I noticed one comment on one of the documents said something like a 3 point, and I'm going to get the number wrong, I apologize, 3.5% CPI for the region. I think if somebody really goes checks that, we're going to be way over 3.5.
Commissioner Fox, I believe that was the number that Fred was given for our region. Fred, if you could weigh in on that, please, where they give us that number.
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. One is I thought maybe Commissioner Fox was asking for more comparables with other marinas. With regard to 3.5, that does come out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics for our region, Class B, and that's what we are. So that is the latest that just came out.
Is that a projection through next year?
No, that's actual. So we're always looking back with regard to Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Right. So I'm just thinking that we're probably understating what this market's going to be.
Let's get the information together in our fall planning packets. That way we can review it beforehand and come with questions to fall planning with the idea of hopefully resolving at fall planning. Does that sound fair to everybody? Okay. Then if somebody can make a motion for the consent agenda with the removal of items B and C for fall planning, that would be great.
Commissioner Chapman can make that motion, approve consent without removal of B and C, with removal of B and C.
Commissioner Fox seconds the motion.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please.
Gary and I.
Fox, aye.
Chapman, aye.
Shepherd, aye as well. Consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward to talking about that more at fall planning. We will move, as I received no emails regarding bridge replacement, we'll move directly to an airport ground leasing discussion. Greg, you ready for that? Actually, it's not really a discussion. You just have an update for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It's more informative in nature, and just obviously if the commission would like to give any feedback to staff, we certainly appreciate your opinions. But so this conversation has been kicked around the AAC a couple times, and it has started with a desire for additional hangar space. The financial considerations really led to the conversation going in a direction of ground leases. Essentially, throughout the conversation, pros and cons were offered. They're listed effectively in the memo. And then with regard to some of the cons of a ground lease, they offered other provisions or other ways to navigate concerns about losing capability to manage if we move to a ground lease structure. Since the time, I did have the opportunity to meet with Commissioner Strike, and there was a suggestion that the presumptions that were presented in I guess it was a March airport planning session, that the T hangars that were constructed through port capital reserves wouldn't really pencil out until year 16. I don't necessarily own that pro forma. I didn't create it. So feeling that I couldn't speak to some of the presumptions that were made, it was suggested that I take a closer look, and I fully support that. And so I'm in the process of refining that analysis, so that way we can be sure whether this is something that whether the port should do it on its own or if ground lease is the financially feasible or advantageous way to move forward. And so that's essentially it. It's more of an update, and that's currently where we're at. I look forward to having that financial analysis complete to include a lease rate analysis and to see if I can backfill that lease rate and make it pencil out. And so I'll have some more information here in the near future, but this is more just an update on progress.
Hey, Greg, thanks for doing that. I think this is really important, and I know some of the concerns that others have on ground leases. When you do your analysis, I would very much appreciate if, as part of that analysis, you're looking at ground lease versus the other options, you take a look at the whole picture of the airport. Right now, we're not cost neutral by any stretch. Assuming we don't have, well, you're going to have to look at capital improvements for the T hangars. I'd like to see analysis of option A, option B, and which is the quicker one, and when would we get cost neutral on the airport? I think that would really be helpful in having a really strong, good discussion on the airport.
I agree. Absolutely.
Okay.
Greg, this is Commissioner Chapman. Just one quick question. Do you feel that you have adequate time between now and fall planning to kind of gather some more of that information, or is that going to be later than that, just so we can anticipate?
Yeah, I think so. I've reached out to some contractors and some construction companies and also architects, so that way I could get a base price, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, is just where a base per square foot. Obviously, it's a presumption, but that, without knowing what some good true numbers are, it's hard for me to run a model and get an assessment. But once I get that, in fact, I've been contacted back by a couple, and I'm expecting some information by the end of this week or early next week. So I think I should be in a good spot so we can have a good informed discussion on that. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, Michael, Executive Director's report.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I just wanted to focus on a couple of key categories. The first is the upcoming schedule for meetings. I think you all should have received an email from Genevieve that lays out the dates. And we're looking at moving fall planning to the 19th of November. We would go ahead and have a normal meeting on November 2nd, a regular commission meeting. And then we're trying to find time for everybody to be in attendance for a discussion with Eileen Akins and a bit of a focus on governance. So Genevieve, I don't know how many responses you've received from commissioners, but I'm hoping that you've received a number and we can lock into these dates tonight.
The only challenge so far is Commissioner Chapman will not be in town on the 16th. So that fall planning date won't work for her. If we want to talk about maybe a different day that week, Christy,
I'm out that whole week.
The whole
so
week. Okay.
How about the week prior?
The week prior, I'm available.
So that is the week of November 8th. So it's the 8th through the 12th. We don't have any other meetings scheduled that week. If the Tuesday, the 9th would work for everybody, no. Got a head shake from Commissioner Shepherd.
No, I'm sorry. No, those do work for me. I'm fine.
Okay.
Don't we have a potential port commissioners meeting on the 9th at noon?
Yeah, that's one of the options for the governance training. The alternative is that, what is it, the 28th?
For a Tuesday, it would be the 30th in November. Unless you're talking about the Thursday, the 28th of October, Michael,
October.
sorry. Is that what you meant? Yeah, so far everyone's replied they're available that day.
So that would work. That would be probably a noon meeting. It would last for 2 or 2.5 hours. And if everyone's available, we could do that sooner and we could move the planning session to the second week in November.
So that would be Thursday, the 28th for the governance workshop and Tuesday, the 9th for fall planning.
And can everyone please respond to Genevieve's email regarding getting back together for meetings in person? I don't need you to respond in a public setting like this, but please everybody respond to her with your comfort level there. And I just want to make sure, I want to know how everybody feels about that.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a meeting schedule. Second, I pointed out that it's not a sure thing, but it looks very good for a $500,000 immediate opportunity fund grant for the Anchor Way project. That still has to go through ODOT for approval. But then we've got some disappointing news today that our request through Senators Merkley and Wyden for the Transportation, Housing and Urban Development funding through the appropriations process was not accepted or was not approved. This was a committee process ultimately that led to the final decisions. And from what I understand from Hal, most of the projects that were selected were focused on housing and other non-infrastructure focused projects. So that would have been $400,000. They each requested $400,000, and both for Anchor Way and for the commercial hangar, neither were approved. So that's a bit of a disappointment there, but we knew that was going to be a long shot. And then just to point out, the pilot controlled lighting is now operational at the airfield. That's been sort of on the list to do for a long time, and an objective of the advisory committee to do. So last Friday, the 15th, we're now pilot controlled. And Hobie, you know how many clicks to use, right? 357. Thank you. You got it. And then finally, a lot of focus on the bridge. First of all, two of the inspections are now complete, the pier cap inspection and the underwater inspection. We've received the dive reports. We've seen the diagrams for the divers. They always do a really good job. But both of those will be reviewed and evaluated by our engineers, and we'll receive our engineer's report for both of those. And then you all know that we're almost complete. John, I'm looking at you. They just have to pull some instruments off the bridge, but virtually complete with the live load evaluation. And as I think you all know, we had a very, very difficult day last Wednesday, the 13th, was it? And led to some pretty significant backups. One of the things we're finding in the gorge now is that there's a lot of folks that are trying to do projects at the same time, and often that's the fall. So there were two blasting projects going on at the same time. On the weekend, the Dales Bridge was closed, and there's work and a weight limit on the Bridge of the Gods. So all of those sort of collided together. But that was a difficult day for John and his crew and the subcontractor, BDI. But thanks to John and others, the testing is done now. They were able to do the two tests, south end and north end, on the same day, and different approach. And we may use this approach more consistently in the future, which is to literally just close the bridge down. As I think Genevieve pointed out, when you give people the idea that they can get across, it just might be a little bit of delay. And when there's a much longer delay, then there's some very upset people. But if we simply say the bridge is closed for this hour or that hour, then people generally can plan around that, and it does not lead to the traffic backups. So, John, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but this was a tremendous burden on our crew. They were working weekends. I think they were probably adding 20 hours a week more hours, and a lot of challenge with traffic and upset drivers. So I just want to give a big thanks to John and his crew for their work on this.
Thanks very much, Michael. With any luck, we'll be off of that bridge completely by noon tomorrow. Pretty happy about that. Just when you see one of those facilities guys out there, give them a hug or say thank you. What a crew you guys have out there. Couldn't be more proud of what they produced. And secondly, the team from BDI that was here, those 4 gentlemen worked like this was a project in their community. And they were absolutely committed to helping us reduce the amount of traffic diversions that we had to do. And we can be very thankful for that hardworking team that BDI sent here as well.
Yeah, great point. So this analysis will be first completed by the BDI, the testing firm, and then that analysis will then go to HDR. At this point, Mark suspects that we'll get a preliminary report or evaluation at the in the end of December, or it might be in January. So that's a pretty crucial point where we'll be able to determine or have a much better sense of whether it's at all feasible to restore the weight limit to the bridge. I guess lastly, I'm at the PNWA conference in Vancouver, and I had the pleasure of introducing, I'm on the executive committee, so they make assignments, and my introduction today before the group was to an assistant program manager for the IBR project. And they did that on purpose, but it was interesting to introduce a guy that was in a leadership role in another much larger bridge replacement project. But his presentation, his comments, and the questions were, I'd say, altogether consistent with the same questions that we get and the same approach we're on. So we're much smaller, but there's a lot of similarities too. That's my report. Are there any questions?
I have one question in regards to I don't know if you're going to go over the TAC Arrow report or if that's just informational, but my only curiosity is this published anywhere on our website or anywhere? It's really helpful and very informational. And I don't know if it's published anywhere, or if it's just in our packets.
No, it's just in your packet, but it is public information. So I think that's a great idea to put it out there on our website so other people can look in on it. Great idea.
Yeah, the packets are available for download from the website. I post them at the same time that I email them to you, but I could certainly isolate the FBO report, and each of our operational areas, airport, marina, bridge, has a blog function, and I can create a blog post with the FBO report as received every month.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting. I mean, too bad we don't have data from years past to see how many people come in for the fly-in.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool to see.
We have some reports. We could go back and make a little article about it for sure.
All right, thank you, Michael. All right, looks like we have a couple of quick committee reports. We'll start with a bridge replacement and bi-state working group. Commissioner Fox.
Yes, Genevieve, if you could bring up the page. Okay, so we'll kind of go through this pretty quickly. Commissioner Anderson from Klickitat County and myself were elected chair and co-chair of the bi-state working group during the meeting. Michael brought in 3 contracted lobbyists that have met with you folks and with us as well. They had a pretty neat little chart that they showed us, target funding they were going after from both Washington State, Oregon, and then the federal target, and some timeframes on there. Once they gave the presentation, we asked a couple of supporting questions. And the big one is none of these plans appear to support going out for a full design contract next summer. To do that, we need somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million to do that. We won't know that until after this estimate's done. So we asked them, what could we do? What can you do to help us attract, 30 million by next year? And to please think out of the box and come back to us for a discussion of what are some options that not only the bi-state working group can consider, but then recommend forward to the Port Commission for for action. We asked them to come back in 2 weeks. Supposedly that's next week sometime. I don't know if they've received formal direction to go do this, but it's kind of the bi-state's assumption that that's going to take place. Hemstra mentioned that there was a funding loan program. He's starting to think, out of the box. And I think he mentioned, and Michael, correct me, it may be through the Army Corps of Engineers that may be able to provide us a loan of 10 million or so, which would help us get well into the design piece of this thing. But it would be a loan. And he asked the question whether the port was considering a toll increase. And if they were, would we consider tying up part of that increase to fund this $10 million number? And I spoke for myself only. I said, I, as one commissioner only, would consider it. No guarantees, no commitments, but would I consider it? Sure, I would. What I'm seeing here is that this issue is a big one, and we got to figure a way around it. The last thing I personally want to do is go out with a partial, even though we award for the whole thing, we only release $3 or $4 or $5 million to this contractor. And I looked at the ODOT rep and I said, and I know what that contractor is going to do to us if we do that. He's going to jack up his price and try and push a lot of his profit up front, betting on the come that we will not get the next tranche of money. So it's a risk item that I think the Bi-State Working Group and definitely myself would strongly encourage. We got to think out of the box on this thing and see if we can't bring funding forward on this thing. There was also mentioned that what the lobbyists are going after won't cover the entire cost of the bridge. And Michael was very succinct, said, no, never was, never guessed it would be. We're going to have a bond of some type to fund the balance of it. I asked him, how long would a bond take? And Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said about 18 months. And that assumes that you've got an organization that's mature in place that can attract bonding.
Right.
So one of the things that I think we've got to be thinking about is that how do we start that process within the port with the ability to transfer it to this new entity if and when it comes into play? I don't think we can wait until this new entity gets in place, which is in 2 or 3 years or whoever, to start an 18-month process. I think that's just this is definitely going to be on the critical path of this project. So I think we got to strongly consider doing something in parallel here. Then very quickly, the status of the project estimate developed. You were briefed last meeting. We have another meeting set up for November 1st, where we're going to be looking at the first flush of cost associated with the scope. And somewhere close by, we're going to need owner-related costs that Michael and his team are on the hook for to provide. So I'm just kind of giving a heads up. We are now starting to focus in on the end date. We need to bring these costs together. Then we'll do a risk analysis on it for contingency evaluations. So the clock's ticking away, and I just want to make sure all parties are structured and organized here. So I'm thinking early December at one of our meetings after the Bi-State Working Group sees it, we'll be bringing it to the port and allowing everybody to kick the tires and look under the hood and make sure you're comfortable with it, what's in it and what's not in it. That's it.
All right, sounds like a lot of work. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I guess I have a little bit. That 18 months, I don't know, we'll see. But there's a lot that goes before any financial considerations can be taken. I mean, you have to do traffic studies. I think the biggest issue will be why would I underwrite an entity that is not there? That's a concern. That you say you have a bi-state working group, but you know, we're just not far enough down the road where you're going to get an underwrite at least our portion of that, you know, the bonding of it. So,
Well, Fred, I think that's the reason why we got to be talking about this. And is there a way that we can assume for bonding purposes, one, there's never going to be a new authority and we're going to be the authority that's running this thing. So we got to go get a bond. When we do that bond, can we make it transferable?
that's probably the easier approach. I wouldn't look at, you know, I would look at us and our record. At least we can get rated, you know, the bi-state working group or any agency, they wouldn't be able to get rated. I mean, they have no history.
You're answering my question.
Right.
Fred.
So
You know exactly where I'm going with this.
but
the
I mean,
port-
we're still, you know, far away. I mean, we still need to we're not far enough down the road to even have, you know, the costing. And when you get closer to the costing, which we're doing, then you start looking at the traffic and what's the
I think it's a good
bandwidth.
to have offline or at a working group meeting.
I have no problem with that, but that's what you asked the question, Commissioner Shepherd. So I'm just, you know, so who has a question? Well, I'm just, if you want to do this later, I'll do it later.
I think it's an important topic, but I definitely think it belongs offline right now.
Okay.
Anything about the presentation though, commissioners? Then we will move to Urban Renewal Agency. I'm not sure which commissioner is going to take this one.
That would be me. I went to that one. Not a whole lot of major stuff at this particular meeting. They talked about parking stations replacement with some of the leftover funding downtown. And the only thing that I said is I just want to make sure that the user interface for the end user is compatible with what is in place at the port. And they said that it was. There was talk about whether they should wait to sunset the port urban renewal before opening urban renewal on Cascade. And so we're going to get a further presentation on that. After the meeting, I did get some information from some local, you know, constituents that said that, you know, us as a port might want to start that conversation about possibly starting the Cascade urban renewal because for borrowing purposes to help with some of the Lot 1 infrastructure. So I just wanted this presentation coming up. I'm eager to hear what the consultants have to say. And then the last piece is that Thursday evening is a joint meeting with Urban Renewal and the Urban Renewal Committee to get the presentations of the proposed changes in traffic patterns on 12th and 13th. They sent out their packet. I think it would be good for everyone to look at it because it's some pretty major proposed traffic changes to 12th and 13th. And although it doesn't affect the port, it does affect our constituents. So we would just want to have it on our radar. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Christy? All right. We will move on. We do not have any action items this evening. Obviously fairly brief meetings. There's not a lot of items to confirm for staff outside of the two consent agenda items that we initially moved off are going to talk about really quickly here. Is there anything else that I missed for staff?
Just that we'll schedule fall planning for November 8th. We'll have a training workshop on October 28th. We will have our regular session on November 2nd.
Okay,
And Daryl, I'm sorry, I jumped in there. I wasn't sure.
You got it.
okay. And I will move to a commission call. If any commissioner has anything for the group, I'm just gonna go down the list of faces I see. So I'll start with Commissioner Fox.
I'm good.
Thank you. Commissioner Strike.
Just to let Gregor know, I will not be at the airport meeting on the 21st. I'll be out of town. And once again, thanks a lot for the pilot control lighting. Job well done.
Commissioner Garing.
I just wanted to confirm, was the fall planning on the 8th or the 9th? Genevieve, thought I heard you say
Thank
the
you.
9th.
Good catch. It's the 9th. Thank you, Heather.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Good catch. Commissioner Chapman.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. I am good as well. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work. So we will, at this time, recess